Well, good afternoon or good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us to our webinar this evening, Be Limitless. I'm very excited because we have a special guest with us tonight, Dr. Jackson. She is an adult and forensic psychiatrist. And just to share a few highlights of her very impressive background, she attended the University of Illinois at Chicago, where she majored in psychology with a minor in theater while studying pre-medicine. And after college, she worked in several social service agencies. While working, she attended Roosevelt University and obtained her master's degree in clinical psychology. Upon completion of that program, she focused on continuing to work in the nonprofit sectors until she attended medical school at Ross University. As a medical student and resident physician, Dr. Jackson understood the importance of understanding behavioral sciences and medicine in the African American community. She has published articles focusing on mental health in the underserved population in the city of Chicago. She completed her forensic psychiatry fellowship at Northwestern Feinberg School of Medicine. And recently she authored her first novel, Make It Right, which is currently available. So I'll share a link with everyone here this evening. And I think the last thing I'd like to share about our guest, Dr. Jackson, she's a Chicago native, and she's truly an example of how a Chicagoan is living their dreams in spite of experiencing many adversities in her life. So we're very grateful to have you here, Dr. Jackson, to speak to all of us this evening. So I will go ahead because I know you have a lot to cover. So just go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. The first thing I want to make sure I do again is share the screen. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Roosevelt University and the Alumni Association for having me. This is most certainly quite a compliment, and I would have never thought this would have happened to me ever. So I really appreciate not only the acknowledgement, but I also appreciate the positive and kind words. It's always nice when you can revisit, experiences such as mine at Roosevelt and, kind of take a 180 or 360, if you will, and come back and present. And I hope that, based on my presentation, that the individuals that are able to listen to this really get the bigger picture of this, which is be limitless and recognize your own power. And in recognizing your own power, pretty much anything is possible, even in spite of, or, any adversities that you've experienced. So being that I wanted to make this presentation and I focus on also the non-traditional aspects of success, I wanted to make this PowerPoint itself somewhat non-traditional in that there's going to be a mixture of, PowerPoints and bullets, but I really want to engage you guys, and I want you to really think about some things within yourself. So I really want to focus on a mixture of closed-ended questions, education a little bit, and then also focusing on open-ended questions where you guys can really think about some of the things that I've talked about and how it can apply to you, not only during this presentation, but hopefully thereafter, and if we're all lucky, for the remainder of our lives. So let me get ready and start the presentation. All right. So it took me a little bit to think about a topic, and what I thought would be appropriate to what I want to represent, not only as Willie Mae Jackson, but also as an alumni of Roosevelt University and as representation of the diversity of the student body population. So when we talk about being limitless, or when I talk about being limitless, it is exactly what it means, being able to thrive under any circumstances with the end goal being what you have desired. So let's get started. So I was always into Greek mythology and folklore during college, particularly during my theater days, both as an undergraduate and also post-undergrad. but there is a Greek, I guess he's not necessarily considered a philosopher, but in my eyes he is, but most certainly a poet. And his name is Aeschylus. And this is what many of his quotes I just found to be quite profound. And this one is, he who learns must suffer, for even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in our own despite, against our own will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God. And this was very profound to me because for the most part, when we reach our levels of success or successes, we have encountered some level of trauma, some level of pain in the form of disappointment, failure, many unpleasant feelings that we have experienced. But ultimately, we come out of these things. And ultimately, the goal is to succeed and continue to thrive. So anybody that's listening to this and watching this, if you know that you are where you want to be, or you are on that path to being where you want to be, or if you're not on that path, but you are a survivor, you are a success. And so we learn from those pains, and we learn from our shortcomings, or we learn from some of the things that we've gone through that was negative, and it helps to empower us and help us to move forward. So I'll start with the basics here. So why did I choose Roosevelt? So got to make sure I put that in there. So obviously location, location, location. So for those of you who are not within the Chicagoland area, or not even from the state of Illinois, Roosevelt University is a university that is located literally downtown Chicago on the Magnificent Mile. Somewhat unfair, but it is on the Magnificent Mile. So I had the opportunity to have classes in amazing rooms that have spectacular views of downtown, including Lake Michigan, sometimes distracting, but nonetheless, very cathartic and relaxing during study time. I really enjoyed the smaller class size, especially coming from a big university like the University of Illinois at Chicago, where there's usually class size of 400 to 500, even the rooms, even the separate classes where you were taught in smaller groups with still about 30 to 50 people. So I did appreciate the smaller class size at Roosevelt, because it also allowed me to establish very close relationships with a lot of people that are now not just colleagues, but also lifelong friends. Very diverse graduate program, a lot of minorities in the program that I participated in, and just positive experiences from peers. Now, let's get to the bread and butter a little bit. So I'm going to present this two ways, asking or, stating who I am. We all have variations of who we are. When someone asks you who you are, you either say, hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm from this place, I'm from this place, I'm from this place. But then there's also that aspect of, what do you do professionally? What do you do outside of where you come from? So it's very important to be able to recognize those two things, because sometimes one may not work without the other, or you may feel as though you are not in a space where you need to be. And it can sometimes lead to just a catastrophic level of thinking where you are not paying attention to some of the beautiful things about yourself. So this is why I wanted to highlight who I am in several ways. So the biggest component here of who I am is I was born and raised on the west side of Chicago to a single mother. It was once an area that was considered a thriving middle-class area when my grandparents, my maternal grandparents, migrated from the South, both from Alabama and from Tennessee. But this was an area that in my time succumbed to a lot of epidemics, including the crack epidemic in the 1980s, which pretty much led a lot of individuals such as myself being raised not just by the mother, but also by the grandparents and the aunts and the uncles and the friends and the family members that lived outside the home. So it was really a culmination of various people, and that true mantra of it takes a village. However, the village that I was raised in most certainly has succumbed to a lot of epidemics, not just crack, but also negligence, violence, quite a few things. But still, most certainly an important place for me because it pretty much defined who I am right now. So when you look at me, you most certainly see an image and an emulation of a West Side Chicago native. I am also a parent to a 6-year-old son. I am a survivor. I am a hopeless romantic, and I'll tell you why that is relevant, because it means I have passion and I'm compassionate about what I do and my applications of what I do professionally and personally. And it's important that you all know that. I'm morally inept and kept, meaning I have my own moral compass and I stick to that. That also helps me to be able to compartmentalize and make choices much more concretely than I probably wouldn't have done in my 20s, but I'm not going to reveal my age, so we're not going to go there. I'm also a daydreamer, a believer, and a strong woman. That's who I am. Now, who am I? As the lovely Christy, she gave you guys a snippet of my background. Now, when you see this, now this may look traditional, but it was far from traditional. I ultimately arrived at multiple places in my life as far as academia is concerned, but I was not the traditional student. I attended Chicago public schools, and back then, you know, there were most certainly top tier high schools. And of course, if you're a Chicagoan, you look at the Whitney Youngs and the Lane Techs. I didn't go to those schools. So that says a lot, and I'll tell you why. Because most certainly going to neighborhood schools, you are not afforded some of the resources that some of the most academically inclined schools were, such as Whitney Young and Lane Tech. And this is just my experience. I want to make sure to state that this is in no way talking negatively about an institution. However, it is important that you all understand where I came from was not that. I went to a high school where 300 freshmen came in and probably less than 100 seniors graduated. And this was due to a lot of things: gun violence, incarceration, teenage mothers, having to leave school to take care of younger brothers and sisters. So there were a lot of psychosocial issues that impacted my community on a huge scale. And when I actually entered college, I was at a high ranking in high school, but when I started college at UIC, and I've never told anyone this, when I went to college at UIC, in my placement test, I placed in remedial chemistry and reading, and I was a high ranked student in my school. So that also says a lot. But nonetheless, that did not deter me, but I was able to have the privilege of becoming the honorary convocation speaker at my high school once I finished college. And I was able to discuss some of my concerns and some of the lack thereof as far as resources to the administration at my high school, which was priceless. And I really appreciate the opportunity having done that. I did complete my bachelor's degree at the University of Illinois, Chicago. I participated in multiple theater productions even after college. The goal was to get into medical school right away, but I was not able to get an adequate score based on the MCAT organization, which is the Medical College Admissions Test. And I was actually told several times that I should consider another career and another path. But obviously, you know, when you recognize who you are and you have been through a struggle, those types of words become common just as much as my ability to go against those had become common as well, and they still do. So I took some time off, attended Roosevelt University. My first graduate semester, my mother passed away in 1999. And I had quite the experience at Roosevelt at that time, in that it was very difficult for me towards the winter months, because she passed away October 23rd of 1999. And at that time, my focus was not on school, but I want to say the Roosevelt University, which is now my family, was very empathetic and compassionate and worked with me through that grieving process, which most certainly was also a defining moment in my life, and still has its markings now. After I attended Roosevelt University, I wanted to spend some time still working in the nonprofit sector. I've worked for the Department of Children and Family Services, also the University of Chicago, and various organizations, while still being rejected in medical school and still saying you will not become a doctor. So I continued to move forward. I participated in, post-baccalaureate programs where you increase your science GPA. I had difficult time with test taking, anxiety with test taking. So that also played a role. But test anxiety was not just the only thing that was impacting my test taking skills. It was years and years and years of rejection and being told that I was non-traditional. So things can seep in your psyche, even if it's not truly at the forefront of your consciousness. But when you are in an intensive situation, even if it's an exam taking, that's when everything floods in. And that's how the mind works sometimes. After that, after continuous rejections, I decided to apply to Ross University. This is a medical school that is located in the Caribbean in Dominica, West Indies. Now it's located in the Bahamas. The majority of the student body were American citizens, and everybody there was just as driven to fulfill goals and ultimately help people and make a difference. I remember when I first started medical school in my white coat ceremony, I actually stood behind the auditorium after everything was done and cried for a good 10 minutes, thinking about my mother and also thinking about the people that told me I would not make it. They most certainly got a teardrop from me too, just for being there in that moment. And then I participated after I finished Ross Medical School. I attended the University of Louisville School of Medicine. That's where I completed my general adult psychiatry residency training, and also had experience also in child and adolescent psychiatry. After that, that's when I returned back to Chicago and completed a forensic psychiatry fellowship at Northwestern Feinberg School of Medicine. And I want to say something too about this. When we have an idea and we stick to that idea, it grows like everything else. And I remember maybe 5 to 7 years prior to even getting in medical school, that Northwestern University had a forensic psychiatry program. And I hadn't even started medical school yet, but I knew that I was going to be a forensic psychiatrist. And I constantly kept on a vision board, if you will, that I would attend Northwestern Feinberg School of Medicine. So don't let nobody tell you what can't happen. Don't do that. Don't believe it, okay? And I'm also an author. So that's who I am. But you all have an idea now of who I really am. So to give you a brief background, what is adult psychiatry? So I treat patients over the age of 18, and I actually have treated a patient at the age of 100. Phenomenal. It was an amazing experience for me. I've worked in many settings, in hospital settings, outpatient settings. Consult liaison is where you work on the medical floors with other specialties of medicine to help patients. I've worked in nursing homes and also in correctional settings. I worked both as an employee and an independent contractor. And after years of working as an employee, I started my own company, and that means I am not an employee to any healthcare organization. I pretty much work for myself, for them. Most certainly the goal as a psychiatrist has always been for me to increase mental health access through community clinics and even online telepsychiatry services. But most importantly, my lifelong goal has and will always be trying to reduce the stigma that is associated with mental health. We continue to deal with this now. Most certainly mental health has now become more prominent, not just in the news, but also in social media. And I have been loving and have been empowered by individuals that are speaking out about things that's going on in their life and mental health. And it is very important that I continue to advocate, not just for patients to seek help, but it's also important to let them know that it is okay that that mental illness does not define you. And so a part of that is kind of working through the stigma so that people can recognize, even if you have a mental illness, it's okay to still get upset. It doesn't mean you need more medicine. It just means you're upset sometimes. So embracing who we are and not allowing stigmas or the stigmas from someone else to make us feel like we are not able to express ourselves, let alone not able to still thrive in spite of. All right. Now, forensic psychiatry is a subspecialty of psychiatry. So of course you don't have to have additional training to practice, but additional training most certainly is beneficial in many ways. So a forensic psychiatrist is someone that focuses on psychiatry and its application within the legal system. So there's the criminal sector, and there's also the civil sector. So the criminal sector focuses on things not limited to criminal responsibility, violence risks assessment, conditional releases, individuals that have been incarcerated for many years, and now they are coming up for parole, or they're coming up for an appeal. I would participate in those types of evaluations to assist the court in making a final decision, which of course is up to, the final decision is up to a judge. And also completed in profiling, criminal profiling, for example, like working with the FBI for cold cases, things like that, really interesting things. Now, I have been practicing forensic psychiatry for many, many years, and it most certainly has been beneficial for me because it has allowed me to be able not only to understand the needs of individuals in the community, but it also helps me to understand the needs of individuals that are also incarcerated and pretty much try to understand and recognize their life's timeline and events that have taken place in their life that have led them to being incarcerated. So it is very interesting. It's a very interesting field, can be very intense, but most certainly, as with anything else, somebody has to do it and it's needed. And I wanted to mention this, some of the civil aspects of forensic psychiatry is, determining medical malpractice or malpractice, or determining if someone is fit to return to work based on a history of mental illness. And also, I wanted to just give you guys a snippet of the copy of my book. I am now a fictional author. I have been working on this character, Dr. Donovan Montgomery, for many, many years. And she just laid dormant, waiting on me to bring her out. And I was finally able to sit down and focus several years ago, and now she is alive. And this is a character of a trilogy series that the book is called Make It Right. And I want you guys to really check it out. It is available on Amazon, and it is about an African-American forensic psychiatrist in the city of Chicago that makes a difference both ethically based on what she defines as being ethical. So I hope that you guys can check it out. Your support is most certainly appreciated. All right, so let's talk about limitless. And I just want to give a basic definition of limitless. It means without being limited, boundless, limitless ambition, for example, limitless space. In theory, we're taught as children in many areas of our lives, including school, home, television programming, and social interactions. Oh my gosh, you can be whatever you want to be, don't limit yourself. And, even from childhood, you'll have a kid, you can ask a 6-year-old, what do you want to be? They'll give you 5 different careers, and they know they can do all of them at once, including the training. But then when we're adults, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And then life itself and the responsibilities of life can sometimes make us feel, as though we are limited on what we can do outside of, the day-to-day career that pretty much pays the bills and that, affords us the things that we need to live. As we age, as I stated, these perspectives shift from limitless to funneled thinking. And sometimes funnel thinking can cause us to feel stuck, or it can make us feel as though we just have to stay where we are. It is what it is, and that's just that. But that is a perspective. That's not reality per se. So the goal is to begin to not think that way, to begin to remove those boundaries, those emotional boundaries, those career boundaries, those societal boundaries with some of the dreams and goals that you have. And that's also what I had to recognize within myself in practice. I've had many people say, why do you want to write a book? You're a physician, you're doing well, you're helping people, you're doing all of these things. And that is true. So most certainly when hearing the opinions of others, You listen, I actively listen, I absorb, but ultimately the end result is what I say and what I think. So that's the power. It's okay to engage and also internalize opinions, but it is not okay to believe opinions that you feel is going to exacerbate or create negative energy that's going to impact your ability to move forward and grow in the capacity in which you want to. So it's very important to recognize these things. And sometimes we have to get back to basics. It's okay to, remind yourself of a definition. I remember as a kid, my favorite word was curious. And I will never forget the Webster dictionary term in first grade, meaning wanting to know, eager to learn. And that is by far my favorite word, curious. So if you have to sometimes go back to basic and remind yourself about a definition and apply it to your life, by all means, do whatever is necessary again to help you to thrive and live your best life. Now, I have what we call a hierarchy of well-being and the road to being limitless. That's a tongue twister, I tell you. So now, if you are on your road to being limitless, perfect. If you are limitless now, wonderful. If you are not, that's okay. The time is now. So I have my own hierarchy, and this is my hierarchy. And I have it based on what I believe is important to help you get to your level of being limitless. One, mental health. And as you notice, mental health is first. Physical health, boundaries, and moral compass in its application. We all have our standards, and we all have our moral compasses. I know that everyone has something that is like a deal breaker, or you have something that you say, hey, that is just not the lane I'm going down, and that's just that. And sometimes we have to have a made up mind in various areas of our lives, because even if we can compartmentalize our lives, it's all still interconnected, all of it. So it's important to be able to look at this. And to me, I look at it like a square. I'm not really good at physics, but I do know some visuals. So I look at the four corner squares. Where am I on my square? What is my percentage? What's carrying more weight? What are my deficits? What am I doing too much of? You have to ask yourself these questions. We have to be able to reset. We have to be able to look at ourselves and do our own checklist. We have checklists at school, through parent-teacher conferences and college. This is your midterm grade. We need to do that for ourselves at home. We need to do that for ourselves in front of a mirror. We need to make sure that we are doing our follow-ups on ourselves without anybody else involved. Just me, myself, and I. That's important. And one of the reasons it's important is because sometimes we can forget who we really are because of so many different things happening. So if you have a visual, or even if you have something, a visual mentally or even physically, you can go back to those things and say, wait a second, let me revisit this, because what I'm thinking I am is not correct based on what I've already done or what I am in the process of doing. So that's important. So basically, you got to check yourself. It's okay. Check yourself sometime. I check myself every single day. And sometimes it's not good, but that's okay. I got to check myself. So, briefly, some of the things that we talk about with physical to help you to be limitless and get you on their road is obviously a good diet. Everyone has, their own preferences, vegan, keto. There's so many different diets out here. But most importantly, it's just about maintaining a good balance, a good healthy diet balance. That triangle we were taught, it always goes back to childhood. The food triangle, the 5 basic food groups, that type of thing. Got to get back to basics. Sleep is very important. I hear many people say, I don't really sleep. I hear a lot of, I read and listen to a lot of people who are most certainly successful say, you don't really sleep. If you really want to get it done and do this, you don't sleep and all of that. I doubt that they are not sleeping. I think that's a variation, okay? You need to sleep. If you don't sleep, it can lead to not only physical conditions, but it can also lead to mental conditions. I know we have all been there where we probably had 2 to 3 hours of sleep one night for whatever reason. And the next day we were either slow or maybe more curt with somebody, or, just like, yeah, whatever. Yeah. So you have to get sleep. You have to stay hydrated. Everyone has their coffee, water, whatever you need, but you have to stay hydrated. And of course, water is most certainly the way to go. Physical activity in whatever form you can tolerate it. Routine screenings, seeing your physicians, getting your routine screenings, depending on your age group, risk factors, family risk factors. You have to go to the doctor routinely and make sure that you are maintaining good physical health, those annual appointments. And I put on here sexual needs. We are all adults here, and that's very important. This is how we all have come to be. And when I say this, sometimes the kids are like, ew. But listen, we're all here because our parents had sex. Give me a break. So this is what's going on. So you have to make sure that you are also meeting your sexual needs. Now, I want to make sure I say this. This does not mean that you have to have sex every day or whatever your thing is, that's your thing. But if it makes you feel good and you have access to it and it helps along the way for what your day and what you need in order to continue to thrive, by all means, it is important to engage it. And it most certainly could be healthy as well. And emotionally, just to have that connection. And of course, when having sex, studies have shown increase of dopamine is insane. So we need good dopamine. So I'm not promoting people to just have sex, but I want you all to recognize that it is an important component of your overall well-being, and also the road to being limitless. There's also empowerment in physical activity. Now, let's talk about the mental health, the number one hierarchy. So one of the things I'm looking at, mental health is so vast. There's so much to talk about. There are so many interventions, recommendations, treatments, if you will. Therapy alone, there are probably, at least off the top of my head that I know, 25 styles of therapy. So there are multiple things that make up our overall mental well-being. One is the emotional boundaries. Are you making sure that certain people, certain groups of people, certain organizations, are you making sure that you are maintaining those boundaries to make sure that it does not cause an impact on your overall mental well-being? Sometimes we don't have boundaries emotionally, and when we don't, we can feel like we're all over the place, and that is true, and we don't feel like we have a good grasp of things. But the most important thing with not having emotional boundaries is that feeling of being not only limited, but also feeling confused. And those are factors that can play a role, not only with just the overall mental health, but also with your physical health, also with your moral compass, and also with maintaining a good diet and just physically taking care of yourself. Also, we look at various things, emotional trauma, unresolved trauma. You have to be proactive about your mental well-being. You have to learn and know what your own emotional cues are and recognize them, the not so good emotional cues and the good emotional cues. We have to know these things. And this also plays into having emotional boundaries. It's okay to recognize, hey, this person is a trigger for me. I get irritated, annoyed, or whatever. I don't need to be around this person right now because they may impact blah, blah, blah. It is okay to say that to yourself. It does not mean that you are selfish. It does not mean that you are being mean. It means that you're being proactive. And of course, you determine the level in which you want to interact with people. But generally speaking, it is important to recognize your own emotional cues for yourself. Also with mental health, what are your coping skills? How do you deal with stress or lack thereof? Social relationships, what are your relationships like with people in your life? Family, professional, friends? How are those interactions with people when you are outside of the home? Are they healthy? Are they worthwhile? These are things that also impact your emotional well-being and the road to being limitless. What are your stress relievers? Recognize that. Just as much as we recognize what can make us feel bad or unpleasant, we need to recognize what makes us feel good as well, and know how to apply it and actually apply it. What are defensive mechanisms? How do you react to stress? How are you engaging other people? Emotional patterns. And this is where we can fall into, personality traits versus disorders. What are your patterns when it comes to stress? What are your patterns when it comes to interacting with people? How do you problem solve? How do you deal with challenges? These all play a role. And ultimately, it is about your overall quality of life. If anything is causing you not to have a good quality of life or a decline in your quality of life, then you have to revisit again some of the factors that I believe play a role in the road to overall good mental health. So I just wanted to briefly talk about some of the things that can impede people, can impede someone on their process to being limitless and just have an overall good emotional and physical health. Struggle versus progress. Sometimes we have to, again, get back to basics. And this is why I just wanted to focus just briefly on just wording and how words, one word, can impact our thoughts and create an infinite amount of perspectives or applications to our lives. So when I talk about struggle versus progress, we have to be able to recognize sometimes with struggle, it can be a positive thing because it helps us to move in the direction in which we want to. Just like the Greek poet Aeschylus, his basic statement was, you have to experience some struggle and pain in order to get to the level of success to where you are. And of course, that's varied for everybody. So when we talk about struggle, I'm talking about negative thoughts, the self-sabotaging. Sometimes we can be our worst enemy. And I know many of you have heard that before, but this is true. We can say, oh, that's not going to happen. I'm not that good, or I can't do this. I can't do that. And sometimes I even educate patients and say, how are you jumping the broom? How are you jumping over the broom so fast when certain things have not even happened? And when we do these negative thoughts, the self-sabotage, the misplaced intentions, misunderstandings of ourselves and realities, we're already failing ourselves before we even start. And that's very interesting because when we want to, or we work towards being positive about ourselves, we sometimes go to the future and automatically say, well, we can't do, and then we create a feeling for that. So you create a real feeling for a hypothetical situation. Stop it. That's not what we need to do. We're going to take it step by step. Just like as a child, you had to take baby steps to walk and ride a bike and learn how to write cursive. I don't even know if they do cursive anymore, but learn how to write cursive. It is a process. Now, the progress is the reality-based thinking, actually working towards your goal, implementing a plan that you believe in. You. Some people may not believe in it. Some people may believe in your dream. Some people may not believe in it at all. And that is okay, because everyone's entitled, again, to an opinion. What matters is what you believe and what it is and what you do. Okay. And it's important to recognize the strides that you've already made as you reach your goal. It's okay to give yourself a pat on the back. I actually learned how to finally fry some chicken. This was like 2 weeks ago. When I tell you I was dancing, I was so happy. So these are the things that we need to do for ourselves. We have to stop the self-sabotage, and we have to give ourselves a pat on the back. We're making strides, and give yourself a pat on the back to those who have not even started, but you have something in your head. You have something written down. Give yourself a pat on the back for a change of thought. That is powerful. Let's talk about fear, doubt versus fearlessness. Doubt comes in the form in you can't make any changes in your life. You can only achieve your goal by taking the traditional route. Okay. If you are not one of those people, what does that lead to? Doubt. Well, then I'm not going to make it. I just told you all, I had a very non-traditional route. I started medical school later in life than most of my colleagues that started immediately after college. And initially that used to weigh on me, but I had to recognize that I'm starting when I'm supposed to start. And for me, starting medical school at the time that I did was actually fortuitous, because There were certain aspects of the medical school experience and the culture I just didn't connect with because I was like 28 and they were 22. Now, that didn't mean that I was more mature than them. That just means I had more experiences in life than they did. So that made it a difference for me. So non-traditional does not mean failure, and non-traditional does not mean that you are less than someone else who took the traditional route. At the end of the day, it's about everybody being at the finish line. I remember I was told by a very wise woman, and if you're from Chicago, again, I was raised on the West Side. So, that's basically, let's look at downtown Chicago. If I lived 10 blocks from downtown Chicago, as a metaphor, I had to drive all the way to Gary, Indiana, from my house, Gary, Indiana, to get to Roosevelt University versus driving 10 minutes to Roosevelt University on the expressway. So my point being, sometimes you just have to go around things in order to get to where you're going. Everything is not, you're not going to go straight through. And that is okay, because you never know who else is on that path, and you never know who's going to be on that path. So it's important to tell your story and your successes for individuals who have not yet made it, and they recognize they can do that as well. Now, that's when the fearlessness comes in. That's when you say, I can be whatever I want. I don't have to subscribe to traditional methods to achieve my ultimate goal, and I can create my own path to become what I believe I am. And that's period. Blocking versus permission. We block our blessings sometimes. We block our ability to move forward because of some of the thoughts that we have in our head based on our own previous experiences of disappointments and failures, and or being told of other experiences by someone else. So we have to keep this in check. Again, it's okay to listen to things, but it's not okay to start believing it and applying it to yourself. So the blocking comes, I don't have time to change my career path. You know how that go. Sometimes you could tell people, I want to be a singer. And they may say, a singer? Man, you're 30 some years old and up. See what I mean? Blocking. We're not going to do that. You're going to change that and give yourself permission. Another thing I wanted to mention in the blocking section is I've heard people say, I don't want to work too hard and then fail. What does that mean? You have to work hard. Now, hard is also a subjective experience as well. But if you're not going to do something because you're afraid to fail, then you are blocking your blessings. And you have to accept blessings for the most part as they come, and recognize that you are worthy and worthwhile to have it all just like everybody else. Doesn't matter if you were, went to Whitney Young. Know this, I got a lot of friends I love that went to Whitney Young. Or whether or not you went to Manly High School like I did. Don't block your blessings. Things are going to come if you believe they are going to come. Okay. Now the permission component comes in when you say, am I doing what I want to do now that's fulfilling? I'm just as qualified and deserving of success. I embrace fear, but I believe in faith. I can do whatever I want. And I won't allow others' limitations of me to dictate my drive. Because sometimes you can have what we call the dream downers. You could come to someone and say, oh my God, I got this purpose. And the moment they say something, you're like, stop it. No. You continue to have that drive and that goal, because even the person that may be telling you to not pursue those things, they may also be internally needing someone to tell them, hey, I'm going to do it, so that they can reflect on them as well. So someone is always listening, even if you don't think they're listening. Someone is going to be impacted by decisions that you make, even if you don't recognize it. You're going to help someone ultimately by helping yourself. And you're not going to know all the people you help, but that's the beautiful component about it. Is just knowing that you can is priceless. And one of the myths of being limitless and taking on multiple careers and doing other things outside of your day-to-day, your 9 to 5, if you will. Some of the myths you hear is you should master one thing before you start something else. And then, that saying that a person is the jack of all trades and a ruler of none, we have been taught that that type of individual is flighty. They're all over the place. They don't necessarily accomplish many things, but that's not true. There are lots of people that have been extremely successful creating multiple things and focusing on multiple goals. So that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to be successful in one particular genre of your career or in your life. I'd rather embrace being a jack of all trades and a ruler of none than embrace nothing. You have to start somewhere. So even if you have multiple goals and you don't know which one to start first, compartmentalize. Where am I in this goal? What is needed? Which goal can you achieve in the shortest amount of time now? So there are different ways that you can look at success and the timeline in which you want to get things done. But remember, this is about your ability to believe in who you are. Every day is a new day to start over. Every day is a new day to start over. And you have to believe that. It does not matter where you come from or who you are. Every day is a new day to start over. Now, let's talk about who are you? And I've been talking about myself. I've been, talking about quite a few things. So this is the fun part where I like the engagement. I thrive off engagement. So it'd be nice to know what you guys thrive off of as well. So who are you? What's your physical health? Where's your physical state right now? Where's your emotional state right now? What are your motivations, your fears, your desires? And I put trauma in there because trauma plays a key role in our ability to move forward. Sometimes when we hear, oh, you have to let go and move in order to move forward, I don't necessarily like how that's worded, letting go, because you can't let go of trauma. You remember it. Something reminds you of it. With trauma, you have to embrace it and you have to accept it, but you have to place it in its own compartment. That's not easy to do. And it can take years to learn how to do that. But every day is a new day to try, because our traumas are past experiences, not the now. And if we allow those past experiences to continue or begin to start in becoming a hindrance rather on our day-to-day life, then it's important to consider seeking professional services. And there is nothing wrong with that. You are not defined by your traumas. You're defined by your own moral compass within yourself. And if you recognize and believe that, then it most certainly will help decisions that you feel you need to make to overall better yourself much more easier to make. And then what are your triumphs? And you notice I put trauma and then triumphs because that's important too, okay? We got the trauma in there. Everyone knows when you see that word, just it's a reactionary word, but also triumph is too. It's just a strong word. I just like that word triumph. I think I'm gonna make that my word of the week. I like that. So with asking open-ended questions now, I think it's important with recognizing your own power, looking at how you can become limitless or continue to be limitless. The question is, what are you waiting for? So whatever you have on the table, on the docket, on your Post-it note, on your napkin, on your nice little binder with the stickers, what are you waiting for? If you have things written on those pieces of paper or what have you, and you haven't started, what are you waiting for? Now, it can be something like, oh, well, money, I'm waiting on this, I'm waiting on this. Okay. If those are things you're waiting for, then what are you waiting for to adjust those things? Everything is a question with the question if it's unresolved. You see what I'm saying? So you have to have a concrete plan. You have to create a concrete plan. And it's okay to ask yourself, even daily if you need to, what are you waiting for? Because this also helps you to recognize what maybe be blocking you, what's causing you to be fearful. So what are you waiting for? Then the next question is, okay, what's standing in your way? Now, if you do your own review, as I discussed earlier, we all have to do reviews of ourselves. and you don't have anybody on that checklist but yourself, stop it. That's important. Now, when I say stop it, that is a technique that is used in cognitive behavioral therapy to stop automatic negative thinking. So that's why I'm saying stop it now. Because if you are standing in your own way, why? It has to be remedied. No different if you were cooking something and it was burning on the stove, you remove it, you clean the house, you open the windows, you do all of these things to make sure that everything is, you can breathe and you're safe and you're feeling relaxed and calm. You have to think about that when it comes to what are you waiting for and what is standing in your way. Now, this is very, very key for me, and it really helps. So sometimes in our day-to-day lives, it can be very difficult to make concrete decisions because you got the day-to-day things nudging at you that can have an influence on how you think and how you make decisions, right? Okay. So sometimes when I find myself in a tizzy, if you will, when I have that type of experience, I have to project myself to my future self and ask myself, okay, what are my priorities 10 years from now? Or if this is a question that I'm struggling with, what will my 10-year from now self say to this? Now, it may seem a little bit, uncomfortable to think about it that way. But if you do, you will be surprised at how quickly you can make some concrete decisions in some aspects of your lives. Now, obviously, this isn't applicable to everything, but when you can look outside of yourself years from now, it allows you to remove the day-to-day things that you are experiencing right now. And I know we have all seen things or mantras or positive affirmations where, when you look back at your life, you notice that you probably shouldn't have wasted time on things that you really shouldn't have. But we're going to all do that because we're experiencing life as it goes. So having that retrospective thinking, you're going to have that. Okay. However, let's look at it in the now from a retrospective perspective. Now, I know that just sounded like a tongue tie, but if you really look at your 10-year self, what would that look like? Where do you think you will be? Even where will you be living? Where do you see yourself, not just financially, romantic wise? Where do you see yourself with your friends? What is going to be your legacy? What is it that you want people to remember about you? What is it that you want people to feel when they see you, and most importantly, when you're not in their presence? So these are the things that are important to think about. And I have 5 years from now and 10 years, because 5 years from now, sometimes that's more measurable for people to make a decision. And then sometimes 10 years can help you even fine tune those decisions even more. And you'll be surprised at some of the decisions that you will finalize. And once you finalize certain decisions that you've struggled with for days, years, months, you will see how much of the level of emotional freedom that you have, and most importantly, the peace of mind that also allows you to be limitless. And finally, with Aeschylus again, he had a quote: "Happiness is a choice that requires effort at times." This is so true, because sometimes we have to work hard at being happy. And you know how sometimes you can be having a stressful day and you can say, "I love my job, I love my job, I love my job." We have to have an effort to be happy, okay? And that is okay. You are worthwhile. Wherever you are in your career path, wherever you are in life, you had to work hard and you had to practice to master where you are, to master your skill set. This is no different. And again, it's about getting back to basics. Sometimes we have to do that. When we were children, again, we wanted confirmation. When you had a spelling test, if you scored even an 80%, and everyone else got a scratch and stiff sticker and you didn't get one, you're like, what's up with that? Hey, I want you to notice my greatness. This is about you recognizing your own greatness as well. So you may not get that sticker from somebody, and sometimes you're gonna have to give that sticker to yourself, and that is okay. But know at the end of your day, at the end of dealing with, a variety of either stressors or just being multitasking and so many things going on, especially with the pandemic, especially with the social distancing, with the holidays coming up, so many different things that people are struggling with and going through. We still have to get back to basics and recognize every day is a new day to start over. Happiness most certainly is a choice. And the goal is to work towards that every day. And it is okay sometimes to not be happy. And I'm saying that even as a psychiatrist, it's okay not to be happy, but it's not okay to be unhappy and you don't have a good quality of life. That is not okay. So again, I want you all to look within yourselves and see your power, see your potential, recognize and know that you can be limitless. Know that happiness is a choice. You are deserving of it, no matter your background, financial background, education, any of that. You are entitled to be happy just like everybody else, and you are entitled to demand it. Thank you guys so much. And I'm open for any Q&A you all have. And thank you again. This has been great.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. If anyone would like to either chat a question in, or you can feel free to unmute and ask your questions.
Yes, doctor, this is Dan Norman. Where is your book available for purchase?
Hi, good evening, Mr. Norman. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. You can purchase my book, Make It Right, on Amazon. And I actually found if you type in Make It Right, multiple books will come up. But if you type in Make It Right novel in the search, for some reason, my book comes up. So yes, and it would be also greatly appreciated if you guys can leave a review on Amazon after you finish reading the book. And I hope you enjoy it. And also, disclaimer, it's not for children. This is an adult book. Okay.
And I did drop the Amazon direct link in the chat for anyone's interested.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Karen. Hi, Dr. Jackson.
Hi, Karen. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Quick question. I read your bio. Just wondering, could you talk a little bit about your work with Dr. Carl Bell?
Oh my goodness. What can I say? So Dr. Carl Bell, he was a very prominent and affluent African-American psychiatrist. And he also specialized in community psychiatry. I met Dr. Bell in 2011 when he had the Community Mental Health Center that was located on the south side of Chicago that was unfortunately closed down by the city. And of course, with doing that, you also displaced a lot of African-Americans in need of mental health services. You displaced them across the city, which obviously is another conversation. My relationship and my work with Dr. Bell was very profound. We actually completed an article that was so detailed, and the number of subjects kept increasing that we had to do a part 1 and 2. And that was the misdiagnosis of African-Americans with mental illness. That was it was enlightening, but it was also difficult because, when you recognize what's lacking, and also not lacking also in resources, but what's also lacking in the medical community with my colleagues on their ability to understand the African-American culture, let alone the experience and how it impacts diagnoses, that was disheartening. But nonetheless, I continue to educate my colleagues, and will always do so that everybody understands what the Black experience is and its impact on mental health and the diagnoses. Dr. Carl Bell most certainly will always remain a prominent figure in the African-American community, and also in the general psychiatry community through the American Psychiatric Association. So I was very blessed to have known Dr. Bell, and not only have worked with him, but to say that he was a true friend is just amazing. And he is truly missed. So yes, very, very good times with Dr. Bell. And I will say, working with him, he also allowed me to be more comfortable with myself, and also taught me as well how to be limitless, and some of the things that he has taught me always sticks with me. And one being in particular, in residency, it was very difficult at times because at the University of Louisville, and I think most residencies, they deal with some level of inequality. And I don't care where you are, it happens. And so one of the things that he taught me, because I felt the need to always defend myself, being a doctor or telling people I'm a doctor when the assumption was otherwise, he taught me to recognize in being limitless who I was. So once I recognized who I was and I knew who I was, then I no longer needed to defend that I was a physician. And not only that, he told me something very prominent too, in that it's not about what you're called, it's about what you respond to. So there were a lot of times people thought I was hard of hearing, but I wasn't. I was just waiting on them to call me what I was. So Dr. Bell taught me that, and I will always be grateful for that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Do we have any other questions for Dr. Jackson?
Great presentation, Dr. Jackson.
Thank you so much, Dr. Williams.
Dr. Jackson, and Christy, I know we're running a little late here, but I do have one concern. In my case, I had a successful career, but I would say an unsuccessful life. And what I mean by that is when you work hard and you have that vision, that goal, there are others around you that don't share your vision, and it impacts how successful, well, in my case, the family can be. They could not understand my vision. So I achieved everything I wanted to do professionally, but the limitlessness was affected with the family, if you know what I'm saying. So when you bring those other factors in with trying to achieve your goals or being limitless, I mean, how would you suggest balancing those factors?
All right, so that most certainly is a loaded question, but it can be answered in multiple ways. So when you say that you were a success professionally and not a success personally, I understand the statement, but I don't believe the statement. You can't be successful professionally and not necessarily be unsuccessful personally. So when you have various family dynamics and individuals can play a role in your life, I think that when we try to recognize, let me say it this way, when we try to balance what you want to do and what other people believe, how can you do that? You can't balance somebody else's opinions and actions towards you and apply that to your professional life and even personal life wholeheartedly. It's impossible. Ultimately, you determine whatever move you're going to make and whatever choice. Now, family, loved ones, absolutely, they can influence, but they don't ultimately make the move that we need to make. They don't do that. You do that. So we're trying to find a balance between the two. It can be very challenging in that respect. I think it's about recognizing what your hierarchy is. It's about recognizing, first of all, the information you're receiving, where they are on your hierarchy. And people, we all have a hierarchy, even with our family. Don't even try. We do. We have the people that we have in our life that we talk to the most, that we talk to only at family functions, or we just wave at driving past. Everybody has relatives that play various roles in our lives in different levels. But this is about being able to first truly know what it is that is either holding you back, that's blocking you, that's making you fearful, that you feel is impeding your ability to see beyond those barriers and get to where you want to be, so you can feel like you're not only being limitless, but you're actually living a life that you want to live. It doesn't stop, and it's not stopping. Even now, we can say, just for the sake of energy and karma, the sake of just something unpredictable happening today, listen to the conversation that we're having right now, and that you decide to put on this stage to talk about. You wouldn't have expected to say this morning, or necessarily even last week, but that's the beauty of waking up every day and knowing sometimes things can happen unexpectedly that can be the best thing for us at that moment in time. So whatever you believe is blocking you, even at this particular point, Mr. Norman, you have to ask yourself why. And if you're able to unblock it, then what are you waiting for? So this is all about you and recognizing what your power is first. Then you look at trying to find, I guess, as you say, a balance between yourself, your professional self, and your family. But that's going to be challenging if you continue to look at it like that, trying to find a balance.
It's not just me. I'm sorry. Literally, in my profession, nobody stays married.
And what is your profession? I'm sorry.
Computer science.
Okay.
It's demanding. You're always gone. You work all the time. The kids are not there to, well, you're not there to deal with the children, but there are these deadlines. There are these millions and millions of dollars on the line to get things done at a certain time.
Sure.
So what I meant by professionally, I'm there. I mean, I'm happy with what I've achieved in my life, but I am not happy with the limits that have been set with my family life. And that's not just to me, it's the profession itself.
Mm-hmm.
And how do I go back and say, I talked to Dr. Jackson last night, and here's some pointers about, how you guys can stay married and stay out of court. So
okay, now you said a whole lot of stuff that you didn't ask in that original question and applied it. So I don't know, Mr. Norman, that's a whole lot. But I will say, and I appreciate you sharing that additional information because it continues to fine tune what I'm talking about. So you just explained to me how you are at work, millions of dollars, deadlines, I'm doing it, I'm taking care of all of the things that I need to in my work life. And that time frame, if you will, is impacting my personal life. Now, I understand, and for the most part, we all know that we have to have a 9-to-5 and a day-to-day. How long have you been working as a computer scientist?
35 years.
35 years, right? So you are beyond PhD. You're like triple doctoral experience as far as what you do for a living. You did not get that far not having not only a made up mind, but having an agenda and sticking to that agenda. So if you are looking at your personal life more and the personal life is starting to creep up next to the job, the professional life on your hierarchy, then you have to ask yourself, what are the things that you can do to make more time for your personal life in spite of your job working for 35 years? And I understand millions of dollars on the line, all of those things, but what are you going to do to make some changes versus, feeling as though you have failed certain aspects personally and you don't see in the near future how you can change that? That's the blocking component. And I say that because if you have been able to thrive in the capacity at which you have it in you, but now you just have to shift. You have to shift the priority to what is mattering most to you. And it sounds like your family. So you have to take whatever avenues you need to ensure that you're making more time for your family, for yourself. That is important. And I don't know your professional background entirely, but I would say 35 years, you are entitled to have some more time for yourself. We have to make sure we own our time, especially as we continue to live and move up in our careers. And with 35 years in, I'm assuming you own some of that time, Mr. Norman.
Oh,
No response. So the answer was yes.
Well, actually, well,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So, Mr. Norman, you need to write, I own my own time, and how will I create more time for things that are important to me? It doesn't have to be as important as work, but you have to ask yourself those two fundamental questions. And just as much as you are keen on protocol, organization, procedures, this most certainly needs to be applied to your personal life. And you most certainly are capable of doing it because you've been doing it for 35 years in another aspect of your life.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jackson, for being here with us tonight, not only for the last hour, but for staying over with us, giving us some extra time just to respond to some of the questions from our guests here tonight. I know me, I have my notebook here and I have a ton of questions, quotes that I pulled from your deck. And I think I have some reflection and journaling just to do on my own. I think this has been extremely beneficial. And so thank you so much for just sharing your story, sharing your wisdom, just, the power and just shifting our thoughts, giving ourselves permission. I love this. Don't block your blessings. That's going to be,
Yes.
I'm stealing that from you for sure. And I hope some others here have that one jotted down too and carry it with them. So thank you so much for being here with us. And thank you to all of our guests for joining as well. This session has been recording. It will be posted on our Lifelong Laker page. And of course, it'll be sent out to all registrants as well.
Thank you so much for having me. What a pleasure. The fact that you said it's recorded. I want to say in my defense to everyone listening, I was a little nervous, so it's okay. Thank you so much. What an honor. Pleasure.
Well, thank you. No, thank you. The pleasure is certainly ours. I can't wait to check out your book. And again, the link is right there in the chat for anyone who is interested. So thank you again to all. Yes, I know we won't. And you have the front covers right behind you there if you want to point.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Got to represent. Most certainly. That's a component of my being limitless. I don't care. I'm going to do me.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for showing up, being you, and for giving us your time and again, your wisdom. Everyone have a good evening.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.